Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we re-delving into one of the most profound and perplexing aviation mysteries of our time, the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. This is a story that has captivated the world, a story of loss, of an unprecedented search, and of questions that, even a decade later, remain unanswered. Join us as we recount the complete timeline of events from the moment MH370 vanished to the latest developments in the ongoing quest for truth. It all began on March 8, 2014. At 12:41 a.m. local time, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, a Boeing 777-200ER, departed from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, bound for Beijing. On board were 227 passengers from 14 nations and 12 Malaysian crew members, led by Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a highly experienced pilot. The flight was routine, taking off into the clear night sky. The first 38 minutes were completely normal. At 1:19 a.m., as the plane was about to leave Malaysian airspace and enter Vietnamese control, the final voice communication came from the cockpit. The co-pilot, Farik Hamid, said, "Good night, Malaysian 370. These would be the last words ever heard from the flight. Just 2 minutes later, at 1:21 a.m., the aircraft's transponder, which communicates its position to air traffic control, suddenly went silent. The plane vanished from civilian radar screens. However, it didn't disappear entirely. Military radar, which operates differently, continued to track an unidentified aircraft. This aircraft, believed to be MH370, deviated sharply from its planned northeasterly flight path. It made a sharp turn to the southwest, flying back across the Malay Peninsula, and then headed northwest over the Strait of Malacca. This deliberate change, of course, executed after communications were cut, was the first major clue that this was no ordinary accident. The plane was flying dark, invisible to commercial air traffic systems. For over an hour, the last primary radar contact was at 2:22 a.m., just off the coast of Phuket, Thailand, far from its intended route. As dawn broke in Beijing, families and friends waiting at the airport began to worry. The arrivals board, which had initially shown the flight as delayed, soon changed to cancelled. This new analysis came from Inmarsat, a British satellite telecommunications company. Their satellite, positioned over the Indian Ocean, had been receiving automatic hourly pings or handshakes from MH370's satellite data unit. Even though the main communication systems were off, this unit continued to operate 4 hours after the plane disappeared from radar. The final ping was received at 8:19 a.m. Malaysian time, a full 7 hours and 38 minutes after takeoff. By analyzing the time delay of these signals, experts were able to calculate the aircraft's distance from the satellite at the time of each ping. This data created two vast arcs of possible locations, one stretching north over Central Asia, and the other stretching south deep into the remote southern Indian Ocean. The northern arc was quickly deemed less likely. It would have required the plane to fly over numerous countries with dense military radar coverage without being detected, which seemed improbable. Therefore, the focus of the search shifted to the southern arc. On March 24, 2014, 16 days after the disappearance, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak made a somber announcement. Based on the Inmarsat data, he concluded that MH370's flight had ended in the southern Indian Ocean, west of Perth, Australia. It was a remote and desolate part of the world, with no landing sites. With deep sadness, he announced that all on board were presumed to have been lost. This marked a devastating turning point for the families, extinguishing the last glimmers of hope for survivors. The underwater search that followed was an unprecedented undertaking in scale and technology. The initial search area was immense, covering thousands of square kilometers of the ocean floor, some of which had never been mapped before. Advanced sonar equipment, including autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, were deployed to scan the seabed at depths of up to 6,000 meters. For nearly 3 years, teams from Australia, Malaysia, and China meticulously combed a 120,000 square kilometer area. The conditions were treacherous, with rough seas and extreme depths pushing the limits of technology. Despite this monumental effort, The main wreckage of the aircraft was never found. In January 2017, the official, government-led search was formally suspended, leaving the world with more questions than answers. However, the story doesn't end there. While the deep-sea search yielded nothing, debris from the aircraft began washing ashore on coastlines thousands of kilometers away. In July 2015, more than a year after the disappearance, a piece of an aircraft wing called a flaperon was discovered on Reunion Island, east of Madagascar. In 2018, the search was briefly revived. A private American company, Ocean Infinity, launched a new no-find, no-fee search using a fleet of more advanced AUVs. They searched a new priority area identified by investigators just north of the original search zone. For over 3 months, their vessel, the seabed constructor, scanned the ocean floor, but once again, the search ended without success. Since then, there have been no active underwater searches for MH370. So, what actually happened? With no black boxers and no main wreckage, there are only theories. The most widely held theory among investigators is that the event was a deliberate act by someone on board, likely one of the pilots. The shutdown of communication systems and the precise, manually flown deviation from the flight path point towards human intervention. Why someone would do this remains a complete mystery. Extensive investigations into the backgrounds of the pilots and passengers found no credible motive or red flags. Other theories have been proposed, ranging from a catastrophic mechanical failure that incapacitated the crew but allowed the plane to fly on autopilot for hours, to a hijacking scenario that went wrong. However, none of these alternative theories fully align with the known evidence, particularly the sequence of events in the cockpit and the aircraft's subsequent flight path. A decade on, the disappearance of MH370 remains one of aviation's greatest unsolved mysteries. For the families of the 239 people on board, the lack of answers means a wound that can never truly heal. It's a story of technological marvels and human limitations, of international cooperation in the face of tragedy, and of a search for truth that continues to this day. Many still hold out hope that new technology or a new analysis of the data will one day pinpoint the final resting place of the aircraft, bringing closure to the families and finally answering the question, what happened to Malaysia Airlines Flight 370? Thank you for joining us for this in-depth look at this enduring mystery. It's a somber topic, but one that deserves to be remembered and understood. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more deep dives into fascinating stories. What do you think? Drop it in the comments below, and stay tuned for another unsolved mystery.